So the transfer portal has caught the ire of college football coaches for pretty much its entire existence. Now, some coaches were understanding of the idea of what the transfer portal would offer to them, that while they might lose some players and they might miss out on some guys, they would have the possibility to go back in and get some other guys to get reinforcements and improve their teams that way. And some programs have done a great job of doing just that, of hitting the transfer portal and developing a bunch of contacts to fill your roster with proven players rather than take chances on high school guys. And it's become kind of the de facto way to build your roster at this point at a lot of places. And so there are good things and bad things that come with the transfer portal. But the idea that it's the end of college football as we know it, I have been staunchly against that idea. I think it's just another avenue to build your roster. It's another tool in the toolbox. And whether or not or how you use it determines your success. I just don't think that the idea that because players now have the power in a situation where transferring has never been easy or fair, and I don't know a way to make it easy or fair. The idea that because you didn't want to go to that school anymore, that your coach could decide where you did get to go to school before is ridiculous. The idea that you had to sit out a year if you did transfer somewhere is ridiculous. It's so incredibly anti-capitalist. It's such a ridiculous system that operated to begin with that they tried to rectify it. It's probably overcorrected, and I don't know if there's a way back from it. But coaches at this point are still bitching about the transfer portal, and at some point you just got to get over it. You got to get over, like, there's like almost a couple of different camps of one, coaches who can't handle the fact that players have the power now, that for so long that the coaches, universities, administrators had the power, and they don't have it anymore. The players hold all of the cards in college football with NIL and the transfer portal. So there's those people who can't deal with the fact that they no longer have the power. There's the people who can't deal with the fact that things are different than they used to be. And it's not that they don't like, I think that you have some people who just don't do change, right? Like Kirk Ferentz doesn't obviously care about his offense being any good and doesn't care about the fact that the game of football has changed dramatically in the last 20 years, and he doesn't really want to participate in it. Okay, fine, whatever. So there are guys that don't do change very well, and change with the transfer portal is it's undoubtedly a ridiculous change, not only from the way that the sport operates, the way you have to recruit, constantly getting to build relationships with new players, etc. It's a lot of change. So I have some semblance of empathy there that it's much more difficult, yes. And then you have the people who I think are in the right, the coaches who are in the right. For instance, Lane Kiffin is in this camp of people who think the transfer portal is good, believes that it's a necessary evil, think that it's a tool in the toolbox, but that the schedule sucks, that it's horrible, that the transfer portal opens when it does in regard to the college football season sucks. And I think they're right that, and there's really not a great way to do this because the transfer portal opens at the end of the college football regular season, in the midst of conference championships, and now is going to be in the midst of the first rounds of the college football playoff, because you have to get kids enrolled for college because they are still student athletes. You have to get them enrolled in their next school before classes start in January. So there is not a great time period to do that other than you just tell a bunch of kids, like, hey, you're not going to school in the winter semester, or, the New Year semester, or you're not going to school in the if you're on quarters. You're not going to school during the winter quarter, which is probably not a great idea. So there's and I think Lane Kiffin is one of those folks who was like, yes, the schedule sucks. Like, it's really bad. It's a bad situation. It's a bad look for the entire sport when, and it's right that if the NFL started free agency during the playoffs, where instead of the games being the key thing that everybody's focused about, it's where's this guy going to go, where's that guy going to go, etc. Then yes, that's a bad thing to take away. Like, you don't want those two things coinciding together. If NBA free agency started during the playoffs, you don't want everybody focused on off the court stuff. You don't want everybody focused on player movement and potential, issues with programs, coaches, etc. But that's what college football is experiencing right now. And yes, that sucks. I agree wholeheartedly with those people. I also, going back, I don't know if there's an easy way to fix that outside of telling kids, hey, why don't you take a couple of months off college? Not a great idea, because there's a whole bunch of legal implications of having those players practice for you, while there's just the stupid can of worms that happens if you don't have those players enrolled in your college, but they are in your college football program. It's just a bad Pandora's box to open. The bitch and complaining and whining about the transfer portal at some point has to end. At some point, coaches have to just get on board with it and stop the I can't believe this is happening. Oh my gosh. Because the idea that you have to, I don't know, either not promise things to get kids to come to your school, or follow through on those promises, or treat them with kind of like a baseline respect of, hey, I'm going to treat you like a human being, is preposterous to me. And it's only going to get worse because the NCAA continues to lose court cases, because whether you agree with this or not, the NCAA and the colleges, especially the athletes in those colleges, they are employees. They make the universities billions of dollars, and their compensation in return for the last 150 years has been, you get a free education out of the deal. And I'm not knocking a free education. It's really nice payment. I don't know how many of my friends / colleagues, whatever the case may be, who would die to have not had to pay for college. But if you don't value that, if you don't value that payment in return, you're not getting paid. And it's really a simple kind of equation here. If you want to pay me in ketchup, and I don't want your ketchup, you didn't pay me. And if I made you billions of US dollars, and I say hey, couldn't help but notice that you got a lot of money, and I got an African-American study degree, or a consumer economics degree, or communications, or whatever the case may be, that the only reason I did this, in people have this notion that players, at some places, players choose to go into these degree mill programs because it's going to be easier for them, when it's just as likely that their position coach, coordinator, head coach told them, hey, if you didn't come here to play school, you came here to play football, you're going to want to choose one of these about 3 or 4 degree programs that you're going to stay eligible. You're not going to have to worry about it. We've got that division, that professor in our back pocket. So it's not always as it seems that because they've got 32 guys on the roster in one degree program, and it's not outlandish for 18 to 22-year-olds to have no idea what they want to do for the rest of their lives, but that's neither here nor there. You've had all of these kids paid with a free education, or at least in college football, a free education. In some sports, I've talked about this in the past, that not everybody on the roster is a full scholarship athlete. And I think we forget about that sometimes, because you see a primetime baseball player at an SEC school or a Pac-12 school or whatever, that you're like, man, that guy's going to college for free. Probably not the case. They're probably still, outside of men's basketball and football, there's probably star athletes on those teams that aren't full scholarship players. So that's been the payment for so long. And if you don't value that, It's not a great payment. And so the players now have the audacity to ask for a cut of the billions of dollars of pie. And believe me, I understand that the MAC and Sun Belt and Mountain West and Conference USA programs aren't making billions of dollars. And that's not necessarily who we're talking about here. We're talking about the group of four and eventually here in the next couple of years, group of three. They're making billions of dollars. And if the players want a cut of that, I think they're entitled to a cut of that. So the idea that the players are now these greedy, grubby, can you believe, like, they're the rest of society just at 18 to 22. And we need to come to grips with that. But the NCAA keeps losing these court cases because the players are employees at the end of the day. And so on April 16th, basically, the transfer portal opens and stays open for good, which is a horribly simplified way to put it. But for the most part, there are no restrictions. It's flat out free agency in college football. And so it's only going to get worse. And so the coaches who accept it and deal with it are going to be the ones that have the advantage, because that's just the way it is, and that's just the way it's going to be. And you can either deal with that mentally and put your ass to work and use it to your advantage, or you can sit and sulk and bitch and complain about it, which I think you've got a pretty good idea of which coaches are going to do that. Does anybody really necessarily like the situation and the scenario that's going to play out? The players probably a little bit, to tell you the truth. Like, oh, they have the power, they have the leverage for the money, for the player movement. Like, yeah, they probably like it. But the old dudes who, this is different, so it's bad, have to deal with that. They don't like that. But there's going to be some small group of coaches who just say, I don't care. If we have to treat players really well, if we have to grovel to them, I don't care. If that's what it takes for us to be successful, we're going to do it. And it's going to separate the really successful people from the really average to mediocre people. And you're going to get to see that kind of play out over the course of the next year, 2 years, of who has the ability to stay at the top of the mountain. Because I think we've seen, like, Dabo Swinney doesn't have the ability to stay at the top of that mountain. Because, like I mentioned last week, that the eras have changed. We've gone from the facilities and the uniforms and all the ancillary bullcrap era to NIL and transfer portal era. How can you get people to give your kids money? How can you get kids to stay there and get them money? How can you keep them involved in your program? And the people who can figure that out, because college coaches, since the beginning of time, have told you, I love college football because it's about relationships. It's about the kids. It's about watching young men grow into better fathers and husbands and citizens, etc. When for a lot of those, that's bullshit. They are lying. That's the nice, warm, fuzzy answer that makes you feel good about that person being the highest paid employee in your state government's payroll. Like, that's, at the end of the day, you can say, I love the kids, I love the relationships, yada, yada, yada. And there's, to a big portion of those people, yes, that's true. But to another sector of them, it's bull crap that they have loved the power and the money that comes with being a college head football coach. And now all of the power is out of that equation. And it's all, just like it is for damn near every other private citizen in America, it's about the Benjamins. And the people who can adapt and change are going to continue to get paid lots of Benjamins. And the people that can't are going to continue to get paid lots of Benjamins to not coach, because they're not going to be successful anymore. It's a really simple endeavor. Can you get your kids money? Can you keep your kids happy? Can you recruit the best kids, the best players? And the people that do that successfully, it's not necessarily going to be simply who has the best and the most amount of money. It's who manages their people the best, which in college football hasn't always been the biggest indicator of success. It's been X's and O's. It's been getting the best assistant coaches. It's been getting the best recruits. Now you get to a situation where who are the best managers of people? Who has the most charisma, the most personality? Who's the best salesman is going to have a leg up on the competition success-wise, and you're going to get to see it play out in kind of real time. And I think it's going to be easy to really see who's got a good beat on what this era of college football is and who doesn't in the win and loss column. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day. However it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content here on Saturday Glory. If you are listening to the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I will see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle here on Saturday.